car will run nicer. So, you know, like, you really should be doing that. And then I have my 3/8 gun, which is what I use a lot. And then I have my cordless drill, and I do have a bigger cordless drill that's basically the same, but it's just a lot beefier. It goes a lot faster, but it's being repaired right now. We had something leaking out there, and basically we needed to drain all the coolant that was leaking into like a giant container. Like it has like a leak catch type situation. It's just a giant like bucket thing that sits up as part of the housing. And that can fill up with fluid, but it also catches like rainwater. But it was mostly like our coolant reservoir thing. They over tightened it for our coolant barrels, and it started leaking down into that. And so we just had to toss out basically a bunch of coolant until they fixed it. But I was like trying to figure out a way to get the coolant out of there without like scooping it out with buckets to put it into our like collection thing. So I just ran my drill with a drill pump, and my drill died. So it's like, yeah, okay, so yeah, you can't run it for like 3 hours pumping a lot of fluid. That is not something that works. Like, yeah, that's a problem. Then I have my little stubby 1/4" one. I actually don't use this a lot, but because I don't like using air tools, but this thing tightens pretty tight. So if you need to do like water pump bolts, like getting them off on some like rusty stuff, that thing works great. And I have my cutoff thing, I have my die grinder. Then I have my little stubby Mac 1/2 inch, which is fucking awesome. It breaks stuff loose, it tightens stuff, it's fast. The speed is so quick. It can just most of the time like get that bolt loose before it knew what was happening. Like, it didn't have time to lock up. Like, it just broke it loose. Like, I like suspension parts that are rusted and using that, because that thing will like sway bar links. Sometimes you have to hold one end and then do that, but this one pretty much just doesn't give it time to get stuck. It just pulls it off, and it works really well. And then I have my cutoff thing for exhaust, which just keep handy right there. And then I put a swivel end on it, so basically you can use that thing. It cuts like butter. It is so nice. It is one of the best tools I've ever used. Like, we have one at the shop, but I just bought one for myself personally because I was like, this thing is freaking awesome. Go down here, and I have my drill bits, and then I have these bits that I got from I just found this kit at Milwaukee, and it has a bunch of stuff in here. And a couple of these I actually moved them up there because I use them more often, and so I just stuck them up there because like every time I go in here, it's for most of these long ones, and then sometimes these sizes, which I just noticed one is missing here. Don't know where that is, but I'm pretty sure Andrew borrowed that. Have to figure that out. And I have my drill bits, just standard ones. I replace these probably every year or so. I keep the old ones, or I give them to somebody. Like, they're shitty for me, but for someone else, like they have shitty bits. So like, used Snap-on ones are nice compared to what they were using. So like, even though they're super worn out for me, like I use them professionally, and I don't really use them at home. Like, I have a kit at home with my used ones, and they work fine for stuff like that. And then my extractor bits. These things will probably break on you, but you pretty much just need to replace them. They work once, but they don't really work multiple times. Like, once you use it, you pretty much need to assume you need to replace it. Then I have these fan clutch removal tools that snap onto your air hose, and mine recently broke. I guess I just gave it too much, and it decided to give out on me, so I might have to get a replacement one of those. So I don't even know where I bought that, but I'm pretty sure I can get just this part. And then I have the Texas Twister, basically for CV axles. You put that on there. If your CV axle is not coming out, you wrench this guy on it, and then you use your air hammer to just pop it out like that. And it works so well. One of the best tools I've ever used. Then I have this long one that I use to also take off fan clutches, because sometimes that actually just works better. And then I have all kinds of different attachments here that I use in different situations that are, also helpful. Then here's my air hammer, my regular bit. I got my pickle forks, and these actually screw on to an end up over here that I pop into my air hammer, one of these guys. And so I can just change which size I need. And these are a lot better than the like brass or whatever metal that is. Works a lot better than that. They seem to pop stuff out whenever they need to do that. This is for taking wheel studs and I think replacing them, like pulling them through. And I got my little stubby hitter. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes breaks things loose. I don't like using it because I don't like damaging stuff, but sometimes you need to use it. and then my chisel bit, which I just basically grind down until it works again, and then replace it. But Snap-on told me that was fine, and he's replaced all the ones that I want to return. And this is for stuck caliper pins. If I'm taking them out like this, typically it's because I know the customer doesn't have enough money to replace the caliper like they need to. But I'm like, I'm gonna put it back in there. Like, I was able to get it out, but you need to replace that because your brakes are gonna start wearing badly. Like, but I was like, if you really don't have any money, we can put that back on there for you. And that sometimes saves me from having to buy a caliper, like, for a customer. And then this is used for this other part. This kit, which is you know, just a normal impact driver. You hit it with a hammer, you put the different bits on it, and this is for getting those brake rotor screws out. But that's the impact version. If you have one that you don't think is going to come out, like it's rusted, it'll work, but it's going to mess that bolt up, like if it doesn't work. And but if you're needing to use that, you're already in a situation where you know, like, you're going to have to probably start drilling some stuff, because typically you gave it a shot like this, and that is your final chance, like, to get that out before you need to start cutting and drilling things. Like, you're probably going to need to buy a rotor if you're not doing that already. Like, and then I have my slide hammer, which I use all the time, and it's actually in a pretty convenient location. It looks like I can't get that out, but I can get that out pretty easily. And then just sticking it back, because this cloth thing moves pretty nicely, it just works fine, works in a good spot. And then I have my suspension tools that I use on the frequent. Actually, I think I have two of these. Oh, they're different sizes. Yeah, they do the same thing for studs, but one's bigger than the other. And then I have this little popper. I use that for control arms. That's how we did it at Mercedes. We had a tool like that, and honestly, I don't know why people don't do it more often. Like, you have a 0% chance of ruining the bolt, and like, you get it out every single time. Like, it's gonna pop and it's gonna be loud, but you hitting it with a hammer isn't really any different. Like, but I do like hitting it with a hammer if I'm replacing a part. Like, you can just pop it out easily. If you already know you're replacing it, like a tie rod end or something like that, go for it, man. Like, just get some anger out. And then that one works really well too for tie rod ends, like popping them out, or even control arms. I've done it for that. And this is for basically on the top of struts when you need to hold that piece. This is the tool that you're supposed to use, and I don't think a lot of people know that. But yeah, that's pretty much what you got to do on that. And then this is also an inverted version of that. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's not. That is for the struts, where instead of having bolts, it like wraps inside of a tube, and it's got that bolt. You stick this in place of where that bolt was, and then you have a 1/2 inch, and you rotate it, and it'll widen those jaws for you to slide the strut out the top of it. So that's what that's for. And then that's the thing, if you need to get more leverage on this, you can put that on there, and that works a little bit better. And then the rest of those, I mean, you'll use them occasionally, but I mostly just have them there because they're on the set. This drawer has been working pretty well like this, but I don't like putting big cases of stuff like that in there, because that's a huge waste of space. Like, all that could fit in this little surface area, but I haven't found a lot of tools to do that. And this is how I've had it in there for a while, so I'm really used to this specific setup. Like, the air hammer was in addition, this was in addition, having my bits here was in addition. Like, I go through this thing pretty often and revise how it needs to fit my work style. And this drawer, I stood on it because I was mad, and I was trying to just show that my toolbox can do that, and then it kind of bent, so now it slides like open and close fine, but it kind of sticks every once in a while over there. I say every once in a while, every time you open it, if you're opening it all the way. I just have random various bits and bolts and stuff. Would you look at that? I lost that boy. Didn't know it ended up here. But basically, sometimes you can get bolts off of cars, like especially if you're taking a lot of engines apart and stuff like that, and you're replacing parts. The bolt is still good, because you'll find on a lot of cars bolts are missing, like, or they're just it's like, that is not a Chevy bolt. And so I just have a lot of them here where, like, they gave you aftermarket hardware. Sometimes you can keep that, like if you didn't have to use all of it for like a universal fit thing. You find a lot of underbody panels that are just missing, but the bolts are still hanging on to a little tiny piece of plastic. And I recommend underbody shields, but I think I've maybe had one out of like maybe 1,000 customers that's ever said, yes, replace my underbody panels. My God, how could they be missing? Like, so I typically just keep the screws. And when you order an underbody panel, I just order the hardware with it, because I just assume that I'm not going to have enough hardware. So I feel like that's a nice trade. Like, they're not doing anything. I'm not stealing, I swear. And then sometimes they give you new suspension nuts and stuff like that. But if it's like a steel or a really good metal one, like sometimes I don't trust the aftermarket. Like, this is a pretty good one, but sometimes I like to use the old hardware if I know it's in a better, like, it's just made better than some of the stuff that they're giving you with, like, struts. Like, I'm like, I know that you just cheaped out and you gave me cheap nuts, and I would like those to not come off, and I would actually trust the factory ones that are, like, the Mercedes are going to give you new nuts and new bolts, but this is still perfectly fine, like, and works well for whatever you took off of a different vehicle. Like, even a lot of this heat stuff, if you just heat the nut up before you take it off, it'll actually, like, dry. And then I've installed this, and it's hardened back up whenever I went to remove it. So it's kind of weird that it's, like, it's mildly reusable. But I do that a lot for missing hardware. It's just, there's nothing better than getting, like, factory stuff. And I find a lot of underbody panels on, like, BMWs and stuff like that, too, where, like, some of the fabric's ripped off, and there's, like, no place to attach it, and it's, like, on with zip ties, but they still have the bolts in there. And I'm just like, okay, well, let me keep those. I've had customers have me remove underbody panels, and that's just like, man, you just restocked me for like 2 months of finding a bolt here and there. Like, and then I have these little plastic nuts for like Mercedes and BMW and stuff like that for interior things. Those are super helpful too. You get those replaced a lot too with underbody panels, and sometimes Mercedes will give you this as like part of hardware for stuff, and it's kind of nice because they'll give you a lot more than you need, which is, I don't know if they just assume you lost them or what, but really helpful. And then just some kind of clamps. This is for like flashlights and stuff. I want to hold them. I don't really do that. If I'm working on like an electrical system, I disconnect the battery. Sometimes I'll put a cover on it and lock it. I mean, the combination's really simple. That's all I'll tell you about it, but it's only there to it's not there for security reason. It's there to let you know, hey, don't plug this back in. Like, you really shouldn't plug this back in, like, without unlocking that. Like, if you have to unlock something, you need to stop what you're doing before going and unplugging stuff that I locked. Like, it knows, like, that's just basically an indicator. Go ask Sergio before you try to plug that back in. Like, and then these are just plastic clips that I've had. Like, sometimes I get them off of cars, sometimes I replace them. And then this one, I replaced a door panel, so I got to keep a lot, which was really nice. Sometimes cars don't have them, and super helpful. This is just like a universal. Yeah, that's just a universal, basically, like, oil filter wrench set. It's funny that I put the note on there. For that specific engine, I think I needed the cap, and I looked in there, and it's not in there. Like, that's not part of this kit. Like, and so I wrote that note to let me know, hey, the N52 engine, that won't be in here. Got this long syringe, really useful for filling like diffs, transmission fluid exchanges, like topping off fluids. It's really great for that because sometimes it's on the side of the transmission, so you can just kind of poke it in there and then just inject fluid. And a lot of times too, I'll literally drain all the fluid and not spill a drop and put it into one of these containers, and then I just measure it out. And then I just put exactly how many liters came out of it. And I know that at minimum, that is a safe level for the vehicle to leave because it was driving like that. But I can put in a little bit more, like maybe 100 or 150 more milliliters. And I can basically like ensure that there is enough fluid in that vehicle. It's going to be a safe driving condition. And I don't need to be doing like, the whole like warm-up phase and all that. Like, I can kind of skip that, and then basically like all the cold startup stuff, and then for the warm one I just basically go drive it till it gets to that temperature, bring it back in and just check and make sure it is overflowing, and you're good to go. And I have gloves here that I use for suspension stuff. This stuff's getting really heavy duty, and then I just have generic work gloves if I just need to bring something with me, but I don't think I use those a lot. And then I just have a whole bunch of hose clamps, and same reason with my flashlight and my trays. Sometimes I'm just working on a lot of vehicles and I need to put a lot of clamps on stuff, and so, like, you know, you're working on 2 or 3 things at a time. Like, it's really nice to have like a bunch of them.